Jack Calloway stood at the edge of a concrete balcony, staring out at the sprawling city below. The skyline of Earth's capital was a mix of sleek, glass-covered towers and old stone structures, reminders of a world that had grown, evolved, and, at times, torn itself apart. His fingers tightened around the railing as memories he tried to bury flooded back, memories of a time before the war, before the galaxy had grown so vast and his life had become so complicated. It had been years since he'd been back. The last time he'd seen her was when he'd made a promise, one he hadn't forgotten, but one he wasn't sure he could keep. "Jack!" A voice called from behind him, breaking his thoughts. Turning, Jack saw the woman who had once been his world, standing there with a smile that seemed unchanged by the years. Emma. The girl he had promised to marry when he grew up. "Emma," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. She stepped forward, her face radiating a mix of happiness and nostalgia. "I never thought this day would come." She closed the gap between them, her eyes lingering on his face. "You look different. Harder, but still the same." Jack managed a tight smile. He wasn't the boy she remembered, but he wasn't sure if he was still the man he had meant to become. Time, duty, and war had a way of changing a person. The boy who had made that promise had been young, naive even, but his promise to her had always lingered in the back of his mind. "I've been busy, Emma," he said quietly, his gaze drifting to the horizon once more. "It's been a long time." She nodded, her expression softening. "I know. We've both changed. But you're here now, and that's what matters." For a moment, they just stood there, silent, as the years between them seemed to disappear. But Jack knew the truth. This reunion was not as simple as a return home. He had come back, but the life he had built, the galaxy he had become a part of, wasn't something that could be left behind. "Are you staying?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. "I wish I could say yes," Jack replied, his words laced with regret. "I've been given a new assignment. Earth has its share of problems. Diplomatic issues. There's no telling how long this will take." Emma's smile faltered just slightly. "I see," she said quietly. "I've heard about the political unrest. The tensions with the Zilvans. But I thought... You thought I'd come back and stay?" Jack cut in gently. "I never wanted to leave, Emma. You know that." She nodded, though her eyes betrayed a trace of uncertainty. "It's just, you always promised. And I believed you." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "So many years. I thought you'd never break that promise." Jack's heart clenched. Her words were a reminder of the weight of that childhood promise. He had made it when he was so young, so full of hope and dreams. Now, as a man, the gravity of those words felt almost impossible. But he had never forgotten them, no matter how many star systems he'd crossed or how many wars he fought. "I haven't broken it, Emma. Not yet." Jack's voice was firm, though it was a struggle to sound as resolute as he wished. "I'll come back. I will. I just..." Before he could continue, a sudden communication buzzed from his wrist pad. His expression hardened, and he glanced down at the message. It was from his superior in the United Galactic Defense Force, UGDF. "Emergency protocol, Zilvan activity escalating near Zarthan sector. Immediate deployment required. Your presence is needed." "Duty calls," Jack muttered under his breath. He felt a pang of frustration. Just when he thought he could finally reconnect, the galaxy had other plans. Emma's face mirrored his own frustration, but she gave him a small, understanding smile. "You don't have to explain, Jack. I know what you're doing. You always have to save the galaxy, don't you?" "It's more complicated than that," Jack replied, though he knew it probably wasn't. It was always about the greater good, always about the peace he was supposed to uphold. "I'm sorry," he added, his voice quiet. "Don't be," Emma said, her tone reassuring. "You're doing what you believe is right. Just don't forget about us, Jack." He met her eyes, his heart heavy. "I won't forget. I promise." But as Jack turned away to prepare for his departure, he knew that promise would be harder to keep than ever. The galaxy was vast, and his role in it, his duty, had only grown more complex. Could he really balance it all? Could he hold on to his past, to Emma, while navigating the delicate threads of intergalactic diplomacy and warfare? As he made his way to the UGDF shuttle, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in that brief exchange. He had returned home, but it wasn't the home he remembered. Emma was right, he had changed. The shuttle doors closed behind him with a sharp hiss, and as the ship lifted off from Earth's surface, Jack glanced out the window one last time. He had left a part of himself behind, his childhood, his promise, the girl he had once known so well. But this time, he wasn't sure if he could keep that promise. Not with everything that lay ahead. The next day. Zarthan was a newly colonized planet, once barren and untamed, now a bustling hub for human settlers. But the calm was deceptive. The Zilvans had targeted it, a calculated move in their long-standing resentment toward humanity. The Zilvans were powerful, technologically advanced, but bitter over the outcome of the last war. Jack's thoughts returned to Emma as he watched the soldiers prepare for the worst. The galaxy, it seemed, had no respect for promises. But he would be damned if he didn't try. He keyed in a final message to Emma, his fingers lingering on the screen. He had no idea when he'd be able to see her again, or if the war would tear them apart for good. "I'll return. I promise." He pressed send. And then, without another word, he stepped into the battle that would change everything. The hum of the starship's engines was a constant reminder of the long journey ahead. Jack stood near the viewport of the UGDF ship, his arms crossed as he stared out into the endless abyss of space. Zarthan, the target of the latest Zilvan aggression, was several light years away, and the tension was palpable. The mission ahead was one of diplomacy, but Jack knew the reality. Words alone wouldn't stop Morn. They never had before. "Admiral Morn won't give up easily," Jack muttered to himself, his reflection in the glass barely visible under the cold light of the stars. His fingers lightly brushed over the communicator on his wrist. Emma's message had come through just hours before. Her words echoed in his mind. "I'll wait for you. Don't forget us." He closed his eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to clear his thoughts. He had a job to do, but it was hard to ignore the pull of what he was leaving behind. The intercom buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. "Captain Calloway, we're approaching the Zilvan command station. We're scheduled for the diplomatic meeting in 15 minutes. Lieutenant Mara Davis's voice crackled through. Jack straightened. His heart rate quickened. It was time. The chamber was stark, modern, sterile, and devoid of any warmth. At the far end, seated at a sleek table, was Admiral Terev Morn. His face was a mask of control, the sharp angles of his features and cold, calculating eyes giving him a predator's air. He wore the dark uniform of the Zilvan military, an outfit that carried both power and disdain. "Captain Calloway," Morn greeted, his voice low but edged with condescension. "I see Earth hasn't fallen to ruin in my absence." Jack nodded curtly but didn't sit. "I didn't come here for pleasantries, Morn." The tension in the room thickened. Morn raised an eyebrow, as if he found Jack's directness amusing. "Very well. Let us dispense with your pleasantries. I've already read your proposal, Captain. Frankly, I'm not impressed. You come here, asking for peace, asking for control over sectors that you have no claim to. And for what? To keep your little human colonies intact? A futile attempt to prolong your empire's reign over the galaxy?" Jack's jaw clenched. He was prepared for this, prepared for Morn's pride, his arrogance. The Zilvans had always viewed themselves as the superior race, and the war had done little to humble them. "You're wrong, Morn," Jack said, his voice steady. "This isn't about control. It's about peace. The galaxy doesn't need another war. Earth has worked tirelessly to rebuild, to maintain the fragile balance that exists now. We've lost enough." Morn scoffed, pushing a thin, silver device across the table. "Peace is a luxury for the weak, Calloway. Your kind is too eager to appease, to pacify. It's in your nature. He leaned forward, his voice darkening. And it's why you'll fail. The Zilvans will never bend the knee to your peace talks. A cold silence fell between them. Jack fought to keep his expression neutral, but inside, the fury was beginning to boil. Morn wasn't interested in peace. This was about power. It always had been. You think the galaxy is still as divided as it once was, don't you? Jack said, his eyes narrowing. We've learned. We've adapted. You'll see that, Morn. The Zilvans may have been powerful once, but we're no longer the naive species you remember. Morn smiled, but there was no humor in it. We shall see, Captain. We shall see. Just as the tension seemed ready to snap, a loud explosion shook the ship. The room vibrated with the force of it, and the lights flickered. Jack's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm, though he knew it wasn't needed. He had already been briefed. The Zilvans weren't interested in negotiations. They had already made their move. A sharp voice crackled over the ship's intercom, confirming what Jack had feared. Zilvan forces have attacked the colony on Zarthan. The main base is under siege. All personnel to battle stations. I repeat, all personnel to battle stations. Jack's blood ran cold. Zarthan. His home base. Emma's home planet. Get your people out of my way. Jack growled to Morn, turning toward the door. He could already hear the chaos outside, the hurried footsteps of soldiers preparing for battle. Morn didn't move. Go ahead, Captain, he said, his tone surprisingly calm. But understand this, your efforts are futile. This war is not for you to fight. Your people should have learned that long ago. Jack's hand slammed into the door controls, and the room's airlock opened with a whoosh. He didn't spare Morn another glance. There was nothing more to say. The UGDF ship was already in motion, racing toward Zarthan. Jack's mind was split. Part of him was already with Emma, wondering if she was safe, and part of him was a soldier, cold and focused, preparing for battle. He had trained for this, for moments like these, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer sense of loss that accompanied the realization that everything he held dear was under threat again. He had left once before to protect her, but now, it seemed, the galaxy was determined to take her from him. As the ship breached the atmosphere of Zarthan, Jack could see the smoke rising from the colony's main base. Zilvan ships hovered overhead, raining destruction upon the defenseless humans below. The base was on fire, and in the distance, he could hear the faintest sounds of gunfire, and the cries of those who fought to defend it. Captain, we're coming in hot! Lieutenant Davis called out from the cockpit. Brace for impact! Jack didn't wait. He was already on his feet, moving toward the rear hatch. His soldiers followed behind him, each prepared for the worst. As the shuttle descended, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline, the soldier in him awakening once more. But this time, the stakes were personal. The moment the hatch opened, all hell broke loose. Zilvan troops fired from the high ground, their plasma rifles lighting up the dark sky. Jack's team dropped to the ground, returning fire with precision. Jack moved with calculated speed, barking orders, guiding his team through the chaos. His heart raced as his mind stayed locked on one thought, Emma. It was only when they reached the colony's perimeter, when Jack saw the wreckage of a UGDF vehicle, that the dread set in. He could feel his pulse thudding in his temples as his eyes scanned the battlefield. Was she here? Was she okay? A soldier fell to his knees beside Jack, blood staining the dirt around him. Sir? He gasped, clutching his side. The civilians, they're trapped in the north sector. Jack didn't hesitate. Take care of him, Jack ordered, his voice firm. I'm going to find Emma. As he pushed forward, the sounds of battle faded into the background. Jack's world shrank to a single purpose: find Emma, keep her safe. And if the galaxy wanted another war, then Jack Calloway would give it to them. The firefight raged around him, but Jack's focus had narrowed to a single objective: finding Emma. His mind raced, pushing aside the chaos of battle, the sound of weapons fire, and the screams of his comrades. Zarthan's surface, once a peaceful colony, had turned into a war zone in the blink of an eye. The skies above were filled with the black silhouettes of Zilvan's ships, their engines glowing ominously. "Captain, we're almost through the perimeter!" Lieutenant Davis called out as she and the rest of Jack's team advanced behind him. Jack barely acknowledged her words. His mind was already on the other side of the battlefield, where the North Sector, the last known location of the civilians, lay in ruins. The enemy had hit hard and fast. The colony, a symbol of humanity's resilience and hope, was burning. They pushed forward, using every tactic they had been trained for, moving through debris and craters, clearing a path as they went. Jack's eyes were scanning the wreckage, looking for anything that might lead him to Emma. His heart beat heavily in his chest, the fear for her safety outweighing all the training and military experience he had. Then, the familiar voice echoed through his earpiece, a beacon of hope in the chaos. "Jack, it's Emma. I'm safe. I'm at the medical station near the eastern perimeter. Please hurry." Jack's breath hitched in his throat. He couldn't remember when he'd last felt such relief. But there was no time to waste. "Davis, take charge of the team. I'm going to get to her," Jack said, his voice clipped with urgency. "Understood, Captain," Davis replied. "We'll cover you." Jack sprinted toward the medical station, his legs pumping, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. The sound of explosions grew louder as he neared the station, and the air was thick with smoke and dust. He rounded a corner, and there it was, the medical station, but it was far from secure. Zilvan forces had found it. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he saw Emma, standing near a group of injured civilians, trying to help. But the sight was too familiar. There was no one there to defend them. "Emma!" Jack shouted, his voice cracking through the turmoil. She turned just as he reached her, her face lighting up with a mixture of joy and disbelief. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow down. Her eyes, full of relief and warmth, locked onto his. She took a step toward him, but the sharp crack of an energy blast shattered the moment. Jack instinctively moved in front of her, raising his weapon. "Get down!" he ordered, pushing Emma to the ground. A Zilvan soldier, dressed in dark battle armor, emerged from the smoke, plasma rifle aimed directly at them. Jack's fingers tightened on his own weapon, and without thinking, he fired first. The shot struck the soldier square in the chest, sending him crashing backward into the debris. Emma, still lying on the ground, looked up at him, eyes wide with fear, but there was something else there too, something she hadn't shown in a long time: hope. "I thought I lost you," she said softly, her voice strained but full of emotion. "I promised, didn't I?" Jack whispered, kneeling beside her and offering his hand to help her up. "I'll never break that promise." Before they could speak more, an explosion rocked the ground beneath them. Jack instinctively pulled Emma into his arms, shielding her from the debris that rained down around them. The world was falling apart, but Jack couldn't focus on anything other than Emma's safety. His eyes searched the area, scanning for any signs of the enemy or more civilians in need of help. "Jack, we can't just stay here," Emma said, her voice urgent. "The Zilvans won't stop. You need to finish this." Jack looked at her, torn between the woman he loved and the galaxy he had sworn to protect. But she was right. If they didn't act, all of this would be for nothing. "I'll make sure they don't take this place," Jack said, standing up and reaching for his communicator. "Davis, prepare for a full assault. The medical station is compromised. We need to evacuate now." The battle continued for hours, but with Jack and his team working relentlessly, the tide began to turn. The Zilvans underestimated the human resistance. They had never expected humanity to fight back so fiercely, especially when personal stakes were so high. Jack moved swiftly through the chaos, coordinating with his team and using every bit of his military training to strike where it hurt most. The UGDF had the upper hand in terms of morale, and Jack knew that's what would make the difference. He just had to hold on long enough to see this through. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept across the horizon, the final push came. The Zilvans, battered and demoralized, began to retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of the battle and the scorched remnants of the medical station. Jack stood in the midst of it all, surveying the damage. The colony was not yet lost, but the war was far from over. His team had won this battle, but the larger conflict with the Zilvans was still looming on the horizon. Emma walked up to him, her face smeared with dirt, her hair disheveled, but her eyes were filled with pride and gratitude. "You did it, Jack," she said, reaching out to touch his arm. "You kept your promise. You came back." Jack looked down at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "I did it for you. And for us." She smiled softly, her hand reaching into her pocket and pulling out a small, ornate box. With trembling fingers, she opened it, revealing a simple, but beautiful, ring. "I couldn't wait any longer," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You promised. So now I'm keeping my part." Jack stared at the ring for a long moment, the weight of everything, the war, the promises, the sacrifices, crashing down on him. Then, without a word, he took the ring from her and slipped it onto her finger. The gesture was simple, yet it carried the weight of everything they had both fought for. The war wasn't over, but in this small, intimate moment they had both won. The galaxy, for all its vastness and complexity, had been shaped by the decisions of its inhabitants. For Jack and Emma, it had always been about something more personal, keeping promises, fighting for the future, and never giving up, no matter how dark the universe seemed. As Jack gazed out at the horizon, he realized that the true fight had just begun. But with Emma by his side, he knew they would face it together. And that was worth everything.